Hi and welcome Holy Hack Challenge players. My name is Thomas Bouve, I work for CounterHack, and you might be wondering as you read the title of this presentation, what exactly is so fun about report writing? Well, in this talk, I'll be showing you how to set up and publish the report template that I've been using for my Holy Hack Challenge write-ups these past 3 years, hopefully taking away some of the tediousness of the report writing process and allowing you to focus on the contents of your reports rather than having to fiddle with styling and formatting and those kinds of things. So grab your favorite drink, grab a snack, and let's get started. Before we dive into the actual setup process and start cloning GitHub repositories and configuring our local machine, let's take a look at a report that was created using this template. So this is my 2022 Holy Hack Challenge write-up, and just like years prior, it contains 3 major sections. There's the welcome page, which I consider to be the executive summary of the report. There's the objective part of the report, which contains each individual write-up for all the challenges. And then there's the extra section, which contains all the different Easter eggs that I might have found as I've played that year's event. Now, on the welcome page, there's an introduction. That introduction welcomes the reader. It contains links to all the various major sections of the report, but it also contains links to noteworthy things that I came across during that year's event. Next, there's the full list of answers. And then there's a conclusion which contains the unlocked narrative, as well as a final screenshot of my avatar and Santa and any of the NPCs in the final room of the game. Now for objectives, they all follow the same structure, right? Each individual write-up follows the same structure. So if we take one as an example, it starts off with a title, the difficulty rating, a direct link to either the terminal or the website, or potentially a downloadable asset required for solving the challenge. Then there's the objective, which contains the information that is on your badge, as well as the full dialogue from the NPC associated with that particular challenge. All the hints that are part of that challenge, and I collapsed those by default just to keep the length of the page down to a minimum. And then the most important part of the write-up is going to be the individual solution for that challenge, right? So one thing to keep in mind here is you need to try and find that balance between keeping it short enough to stay within submission guidelines, but also making sure you add enough information for anyone reading your report to understand how you've solved it, and making sure they're able to implement your solution as well and follow your write-up. Finally, towards the end, there's the answer. And at the very bottom, there's the response from the NPC once you solve the challenge itself. A similar dialogue as we have at the top of the page. Now, in some cases, there might be a vulnerability in the challenge and an unintentional vulnerability that allows you to exploit the challenge in an unintended way. When I come across those situations, I add a small blurb under the answer block, which kind of highlights that, because it's always kind of a proud moment when that happens. And so I want to make sure it's in the report, but it's not as important as the primary solution. So I tend to put that more towards the bottom and not front and center necessarily. And then finally, there's also the Easter egg section, and that's one of my favorite things from Holy Hack Challenge, is that there's always so many Easter eggs that are part of each game. And so whenever I find them, or whenever I start looking for them and I find them, I want to make sure I highlight them in my report as well. Similar to, for example, finding an unintentional vulnerability in a challenge, these are obviously not the most important part of the write-up, but I do find that they add a lot to the overall experience. So I always make sure to have a bit of a list of that at the end of the report. Final notes I want to make about the template and what the template kind of enables you to do is that there's two or three shortcut keys that you can use as you navigate the report. There's the N and the P keys for next and previous. So if you press N, it'll automatically go to the next section. And so if you keep pressing N, and start off from the welcome page, you'll ultimately then end up on Easter eggs, and you will have hit every single page in the report. So that's handy if you're actually planning on reading everything from start to finish. And then secondly, there's a / keystroke as well, which will automatically pop up the search dialog, which allows you to quickly find a string in any section of your report as well, which I've actually used quite a few times to refer back to previous reports if I wanted to kind of find something that I did in previous years, or a command that I know I used at some point, but I don't really know what that exact command was. That search functionality has helped me quite a bit for that. So that is ultimately what the template allows you to create as you add your content. So let's go ahead and set all of that up and make sure you're ready to go and submit your report. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is download the template. So go to the repository, click on the green code button and press download.zip. There we go. Let's move this out of the way and then put that file in the right place. So grab the archive that I just downloaded, move it into the demo folder, unpack, move into that folder. There we go. Next step is I need to set up a Python virtual environment to actually run all of this. So I'll go ahead and do that next. So I'm using the venv module and I'm creating a virtual environment called venv as well. It's going to take a couple of seconds to complete. Just wait for that to be done. There we go. Perfect. So next thing I need to do is activate that virtual environment. I'll do this by running this command. Now, if you're on Windows, there's a PowerShell script to do the same thing. Since I'm on macOS, if you're on Linux, just use the activate script. There we go. So we can see that my virtual environment is now active. And next I can install all the required dependencies, which I've defined in the requirements.txt file to be able to run all of this locally. So pip install -r requirements.txt. That's going to take a couple of seconds to complete. Now, if you're wondering why download the repository files and why not just clone it, the problem is that the cloned repository, you won't be able to change the visibility or access to that repository anymore. It has to be public. And so my recommendation is to set the repository itself to private up until the submission deadline or close to the submission deadline, and then open it up to the public once that comes closer. If you forward the repository, you won't be able to do that. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so we've got all our dependencies installed. So that should allow us to now run the MkDocs command. So the template is based on MkDocs, which is a static site generator specifically designed for documentation websites. Ideal for a project like this, ideal for a write-up like this, in combination with the material for MkDocs theme, which I've used for the past 3 or 4 years now for all my write-ups, and which has a lot of preference options and configurability, which I really like. So let's go ahead and look at some of the options we have. We can run MkDocs serve, which will start up a local web server, and we'll do that in a second to render our site locally. We have GitHub deploy, which will publish our statically generated content into a separate branch on our GitHub repository and allow us to host that via GitHub pages. And then finally, there's a build command, which if you don't want to use GitHub pages, that will generate all the static site content. So you can copy that to your own hosting provider and serve it from a different location. So starting off with MkDocs serve, that will start up a local running web server. There we go. And I should be able to now go to localhost port 8000. Let's make just this full screen. And this is the template by default. This is what comes with the template out of the box. And as you can see, this is really close to the write-up example I gave previously for my write-up from 2022. And it has the sidebar. It has some predefined content that you can use as a starting point. But it has the same structure and the same type of content as what was shown earlier. So we have different sections, each with different objectives in there. There's the Easter eggs, and there's the introduction, which has the answers list as well as the conclusion. So what does this look like from a files perspective? So let me move this out of the way. Let me jump out of this for a second. Let me open up the files in my code editor. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so let me start up the locally hosted server as well again. So MkDocs serve. Perfect. So the structure of the template is as follows. So I make this a little bit bigger. The main configuration is going to be found or can be done in mkdocs.yaml. I won't go over all the different details here. I think the most important thing to note is you can change your site name and site author at the top here. You can select your main icon or logo for the site in this particular area here. I've provided some commented out alternative logos that are like holiday themed. You can change the color scheme for the light version of the site and the dark mode version of the site here. The material for MkDocs reference documentation has all the nitty-gritty details you need to know to make changes here as well. And then at the very bottom is the structure of the navigation sidebar. So for example, right now I have objective 4 and 5 under section 3. If I want to change this and I want to move objective 4 under section 2, just change it here and just move that over. And what should happen now is, move this out of the way, grab my browser. We should see that objective 4 is automatically updated. Objective 4 basically now lives under section 2 and not under section 3 anymore. So any changes that you make to these files on the fly will be rendered by the local web server dynamically. So you'll see those changes happen automatically as you add content, which is really useful. So for example, if I want to change the title and the icon here, I can do that as well. So let's go into MkDocs. Let's say this is my Sans write-up 2023, and instead of the tree, I want to use, for example, candy cane. Just save that, and automatically it basically changes to the updated values that you add into that file. In terms of content itself, those can be found in the docs folder. So there's different folders here. That's kind of a structure that I selected. So if you want to make changes to that, you're obviously free to do so. So it has the index file with the introduction and the overview of the answers. It has the Easter eggs file, which has an overview of all the different Easter eggs that you found. And then in the objectives folder are all the individual objective write-ups as separate files as well. Any images that I add to my report, I put them in a separate dedicated image folder. Images for objectives go into folder specifically for the objective, and then images that are just miscellaneous stuff like the introduction image and the final image or any Easter egg images, I put them under miscellaneous here. There we go. Some of the content that is available in a template by default, let's show that real quick as well. So let's just open up under the objectives. Structure is exactly the same as what was shown previously, but some of the sample content contains some of the admonitions or callouts that you can use. How to add images, a dynamically rendered diagram. So this is a mermaid diagram. This is all selectable text. This is not an image. Code blocks with line numbering and a highlighted line as well to kind of draw the attention of the reader to that particular line. There's some content for tables, which are sortable if you want to sort it by a different column. And then the answer and the response as well. If you're wondering, like, how do I add specific types of content, those kinds of things, in the README for the repository, for the template, what I've added is a table with links to both my final write-ups as well as the original content that was used to render those. So feel free to go and take a peek at those and then replicate the markdown content from there to do the same thing in your specific report as well. So how do we get this over to GitHub? So let's do that next. So put this out of the way. Let's go ahead and go to our GitHub account. I'll back out of MkDocs serving the site locally here. And what I'll do is I'll start or create a new repository. So go ahead into my account, repositories, and then say create a new repository. Let's call it my HHC write-up 2023. I will set it to public for now because I do want to showcase what the rendered pages looks like. So I'll keep that, but typically you want to set that to private, like I said, up until the submission deadline. So let's create it, create repository. There we go. And we'll get some instructions on how or what we need to execute, what Git commands we need to execute to push our local files into that particular repository. So first thing we need to do is we can ignore the first line because we obviously have already our content. So initialize that repository. We don't need to add just the README, we need to add everything, so we'll just use a period. There we go. We'll commit all those files locally. That's fine. Next up for the branch, and then we'll add a remote that tells Git basically that we push, or how we should be pushing our local files to our GitHub account, our GitHub repository. So add that remote next, called origin, and next we're going to push our files over to our newly created repository. So git push -u origin main, which basically says, hey, push it to the origin remote and to the main branch. If I refresh this page, I should now have all those files up on GitHub. So right now we have one branch called main that contains our Markdown files, our original content, not our rendered or generated website yet. We'll do that next. So to do so, we just use MkDocs gh deploy for GitHub deploy. What that will do is it'll start building a version of the website, like all the static content locally, and then it's going to push all that content into a new branch on our repository called GitHub Pages. There we go. So to enable GitHub Pages for your repository, what you'll do is you'll go over to Settings, and then move down to Pages. Right now, it's set up to deploy from a branch. The branch we want to deploy from is GitHub Pages, and it should take a couple of minutes normally. Just doesn't take all that long, but it might take a while. Oh, there we go. It's already done. So in my case, and this might be different from your use case, I've got GitHub configured to serve from a custom domain. If you're just using GitHub to serve the pages, this URL is obviously going to look a little bit different. It's not going to have a custom domain, but it's going to have a GitHub domain there. But once you've configured it to serve your serve your pages from a branch called GitHub Pages here, and you've saved it, after a while you'll see your site is live at this particular URL. So if you click on that, or if you open that, it'll be exactly the same thing as you were rendering locally just a couple of minutes earlier, but hosted online on GitHub Pages, either on GitHub, a GitHub URL, or any custom URL that you've configured in your settings. Final note that I want to make here is there's let me make this a little bit bigger first. There we go. In the actual content, if you go into one of the sections, like for an objective, some of the links here are some good references. So if you want to know more about the different types of callouts and admonitions, there's a direct link here to that. On how to create images, there's a link for that as well. How to create diagrams and code blocks and tables. These all link to the MkDocs documentation. So for example, if you want to know what the different callout types are that you have at your disposal, these are all the different callouts that you can use in your content to make things stand out and grab your reader's attention, for example. So that's interesting to know. If you want to change colors, for example, you can just search for colors, so changing the colors, and you'll have the option, or it'll have an overview of all the different colors that are available, both as a primary color as well as an accent color that you could use in your report or your write-up too. So this is definitely a very extensive like reference for that you can use. Then it has a lot of information, a lot of things that you probably won't use. I would recommend starting with the basics for the template. But if you want to go further, you want to change things up, I would definitely recommend looking at this. So I guess all that's left now, once you've completed all these steps, is to actually start adding your content. So start adding those Markdown files into the appropriate locations, pushing your changes to GitHub, but make sure, and maybe I should show that real quick as well, make sure that as you confirm that all of this is working, go back into the general settings of your repository and then move to the bottom where it says danger zone and say change, or click on change visibility and say change to private and say, yes, I definitely want to do that. There you go. The GitHub pages might stay online for a couple of seconds, minutes still before they become unavailable. But at some point, the repository will be back to private. If I go to code, you'll notice that it says private here. And after a while, your GitHub pages will become unavailable again for that repository as well. So make sure to do that up until, like I said, close to the submission deadline. But once that passes, or once it's close to the submission deadline, feel free to open it all up so people can go and read your report and see what you did. So if you're still playing, have fun exploring the various islands, hacking away at the challenges and finding those little secrets and Easter eggs. If you've already started writing your report, good luck on creating that write-up. I always look forward to reading how others solve some of the challenges and approach some of the problems for that year's event. Now, if you're wondering if you should submit a report, I highly recommend doing so. And I hope that this template and presentation can help take away some of the heavy lifting and allows you to focus on your report content rather than having to fiddle with styling or worry about configuring things. Now, even if you haven't solved all the challenges, there's a value in creating a report as there's some awesome random draw prizes to be won for all submitted entries. Now, remember, creating a whole day hack challenge report is actually a whimsical way of improving your report writing skills, which you can apply in everyday life as well. Now, that's it from me. I wish you all an amazing time at the Keys Islands. Best of luck writing your report, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.